Who is it? Hey, Angela. Hi, how are you? Welcome back to the garden. I'm well, thank you. Well, come on in. Lots changed since you were here before. We've got the foxtails and we've got the purple oxalis, which are now in flower, so that's kind of nice. The lantern should go on soon. Be nice. Welcome, welcome, welcome. A lot of flowers are in bloom, but more to come. It's a lot that hasn't bloomed yet, so we're excited. Very excited. So I like to decorate the garden. I consider myself kind of an amateur artist, so I'll stencil things and I'll paint things and make lamp posts. So this is just a fence post with a plant hanger and some little lanterns, and they go on in the night as we walk. So you know, it's a nice decorative touch. Sorry, I can't help but be silly. I'm just a silly person. So over here, we've got some Earth Kind Knockout double pink roses. And we've got some zinnias. And also we've got some California bluebells. Since California is my home initially, I've got California bluebells. We've got bachelor buttons and Chinese house flowers. So they're getting big, and I'll spread them out, move some to other beds, and so they have room to move around. So they were direct seeded about 6 weeks ago. Well, I think this is probably my favorite section. I really am digging these bunching onions because they're so tall. They feed me, they feed the bees, they're decorative. They look like something from a Dr. Seuss book, I think. And the bees are incredibly docile. They're just so busy eating that they really have no fear of us. And you can see, hello babies, hello. They don't really have fear of anyone. In the daytime, especially first thing in the morning, they really are covered in bees. So beautiful plants and so incredibly delicious. So I do like this corner. I like the poppies that will pop up soon enough. I guess that's what, because they call them poppies because they pop up, right? I've got lovely passion vines that are coming up through here. I've got some Blauhilde green beans. They're really not green, they're purple. Beautiful. They're the color that you see in the stems. This stem color is reflected in not only the flowers, but in the plants. And you can see the flowers are beginning, and they're lovely little purple flowers when they open. They're purple now, you can see that. And the leaves have variegation on them that's purple. So it's lovely. It's just a lovely plant. And so I plant them and they hang down along with cucumbers and a little butternut squash. Okay. So I like to mix flowers and food. As you'll see, you see the passion vine, which also gives you fruit. But you'll see zinnias, and you'll also see lots of Kikyozaki morning glories that will cover this as well. I put flowers in the back, and you can see parsley and garlic chives in the front, and then some cosmos. So everything's mixed together in order to attract a lot of pollinators. And my garden is always busy. You'll see everything under the sun. Frogs especially are out about this time. I'm trying to find some, but the frogs like to come out in the evening, especially when I water, so they come out and get a bath. This is a lower bed. I grow things that don't require super deep roots. We've got a row of bachelor buttons and I think a Chinese house flower, but we'll see. These are different types of sweet peppers. Then I've got my little Tom Thumb tomatoes, which make me happy. These only get a foot tall, and so I can have tomatoes, cherry tomatoes, without the fuss. Then I've got some Salvia hominum Blue Monday, which will give a nice cover for the tomatoes so the birds don't want them. But to accommodate the birds, I've got a nice bird bath with plenty of water so they won't need water from my tomatoes. I give them a lovely feeder so that they have food, and I try to make them very happy so they leave my produce alone. So can't always keep the squirrels from stealing tomatoes, but Usually the birds will leave most of them alone. So got eggplant on the end because it's just so pretty, and when it's growing, its flowers are pretty, the leaves get really beautiful. Everything about them, the calyx, so just gorgeous plants. So this is the place where currently I keep herbs. I do rotate this. I also keep lettuces, pak choys, any type of leafy green. I'm very fond of Baris chard, which is just delicious. I don't like other types of chard, but that one I love. But it makes it so that I can easily grab something and cook with it right away. Behind me is my little mini greenhouse that I finished in February, early March. It has 16 pieces of glass. I know, because I had to put them all in. That was lots of fun. So I routed the windows for that. And right now it's full of green beans and early Italian beans, which are just so delicious. A little bit of basil still, but I started okra. I had eggplant. I had cucumbers, I had chilies, I had tomatoes, I had all of that in here, and they all went out into other beds except for the green beans and one of the basil plants. And so they've been started from seeds directly in here, these green beans. So it's a nice addition, and even with ice on the outside and cold weather freezes, it's never frozen in here. So the glass takes in heat during the day, especially the afternoon sun, and as long as it's closed in the afternoon, these plants will get a nice warm toasty environment all night long. This bed was the first to be planted this year because of that. This stays planted. This never is unplanted. So some herbs are always growing. Some lettuces are always growing. I switched to summer varieties when the heat comes, and those last pretty well until about July. And then I start again in October or November with those. So I love the wispiness of cosmos. And I like that they give cover for wildlife. I really strongly believe that if you support wildlife, you'll have a really nice balanced ecosystem in your garden. It doesn't always mean that I get to keep all produce that I grow, but it adds a lot to the garden. So on any given day, you will see toads, you'll see frogs, you'll see lizards, you'll see hummingbirds, dragonflies, all types of bees. And this garden is just alive with life, and I really, really appreciate all the creatures that come to my garden. So not always the armadillos or the squirrels, but I'm trying to love them as much too. So I've got roses that come up over the top, and the grapes come from the center. A lot of supportive wildlife. These salvias are really beloved by the hummingbirds, so I like to see the ruby-throated hummingbirds come and feed there. And these are for me. These are all for me because the roses are fantastic when they open, and they smell absolutely amazing. And so I have them coming from both ends. They're planted in the ground rather than in a raised bed, and they get bigger and fuller every year, and I get more and more roses. So this is year 3, and I'm finally getting a good spread of roses, and I'm grateful for that. So you asked me what my favorite plant is, which it's really, really hard to decide. But I have to say, of the roses, this is my favorite because they are just so darn beautiful. And I'm going to show you why. Look at that rose. Look at that. It's just wonderful. Gorgeous, gorgeous rose. So I like these a lot. And I have a lot of roses, but I would say this is my favorite to look at. And a lot of beautiful flowers to make me happy. I've got a mix of flowers here. We've got verbenas. These are the prostrate kind. I've got Zinnia elegans. Got lots of Hungarian breadseed poppy. They're blue or purple. And of course the roses are here as well. But the poppies are what I've been waiting for. I cold stratified them for 4 months in a bag in the refrigerator. And so I've been waiting for them. And this is the third year I planted them, but the only year I got them. And I think the cold stratification was it. So we shall see. But they do need thinning. It's time to thin, and that's a common thing when you have so many flowers and plants. You've got to thin them. But I pot them up and give them as gifts. So, you know, cheap gifts. So I'm standing now in what becomes the butterfly and pollinator garden. I really like pollinators, and I want as many in my yard as I can get. So there are things for hummingbirds. There are beauty berries for the birds. There are cone flowers all along in here. They're still young. I've got the salvias, of course. I've got an eastern redbud that I hope one day will be host to some birds. I've got the tower for things to climb, so every year I put something different. I've got some delphiniums and foxgloves in the back, and then a bunch of little delphinium seedlings that came from seed. Here I've got this lovely Verbena bonariensis, a lollipop, and it's very happy, as you can see. It was, a month ago, it was to my thigh, and now these are, I think, about my height, and I'm 5'7", so these are getting pretty big. So, and I'm just going to let them. They seem happy, so why not, right? Lay out there, little tiny purple flowers, and the hummingbirds love them. So I'll sit out here and watch the hummingbirds eat. I'll sit right there on that little bench and just watch them for hours and photograph them. So, yeah. So this is probably my favorite spot. And after I come out, I put my coffee on and I come out in the morning. I sit here after I've done my garden tour and checked everything. And I sit here and I drink coffee and I watch hummingbirds and I watch the birds. So this is probably my favorite spot because I can see a good chunk of the yard and I can see a lot of wildlife from here. So I often sit here with my camera and I try to pretend I'm not moving so that I can capture the wildlife. So, but this is my space, and I like all of the dianthus behind me, some verbena that's volunteered, and my Texas mountain laurel when it's in bloom smells like grapes, and so I just sit here and sniff it over and over and over again. I don't know if that's healthy, but I sure do. So this is where I put a lot of climbing plants that don't fit in the main garden. And plants that really like to spread out. So right now you've got quite a few little plants, and you can see where I spilled a packet of seeds here. I've got lots of, looks like salvias, maybe verbenas, we'll see. But I've got squashes, cucumbers, melons, clematis, cypress vine for the hummingbirds. I've got hollyhocks and peonies in here. And so some things will come out in time. That is a squash rapicante. It's an Italian squash used for gnocchi, and I really do look forward to stuffing pasta with it. And so I've got the clematis, which are just about to open, and they're stunningly beautiful flowers. Even the flower head is gorgeous before it opens. So, but this is a very sturdy, economical option, and I do plan to build a little retreat back here so I can turn and see that lovely view from here, which makes me happy. And I just watched all the birds and hummingbirds dart in and out. Onions really sculpturally add something. And the backdrop of roses spilling over. Everyone kind of gave me slack about that I wanted to paint the fence chocolate and have all the accents in black. And everyone thought, that's going to look crazy terrible. It's going to be too dark. I said, don't worry, I'll put plants that are bright. So, asking me about how I manage pests and diseases. I really keep an eye on my plants, and so I catch things early. But a lot of things are managed by the creatures that come to my yard. So I have a lot of frogs and a lot of lizards, and they do a very good job eating a lot of problems that would arise. I've got ladybugs that alert me to the presence of aphids. So when I see quite a few ladybugs, say around any kind of brassica, I know that I've got aphids. They kind of are my alert system. So I typically will overplant to some extent, and if a plant has diseases, I will take the plant out. I also use biological controls, including things like BT, which is Bacillus thuringiensis. So I'll use those especially on the squashes, the cucumbers, the melons. Those all get that. Once a week I put the BT on them, and so it's a biological and targets just the worms that like to eat them. So I try to use biologicals. I try to use natural controls by encouraging frogs and toads and lizards and birds. And in the morning, you can see all the birds, and they are eating all kinds of creatures, and I'm quite happy with that. So, and diseases, I don't seem to get a lot of diseases in the raised beds like I do in ground. If I see powdery mildew, or fungi, fungal growth on the roses, I'll use horticultural oils instead. Clove, thyme. Neem I'm not really keen on, even though it's effective. It has an effect on the bees, so I typically don't use it, but I will use thyme and clove oils that are made for that purpose. So I don't use any chemical-based things. I don't spray for weeds whatsoever. I mechanically, with my own two hands and a lovely Cobra tool, get out weeds and grasses in beds. So I do a lot of hand work. But that way I can eat everything that's edible in my garden, and I don't have any problems with, basil starts growing in the gravel. I can move it into the beds and eat it without any difficulty. So weekly, I would say it depends on the season. At the beginning of every season, it typically takes me more time to take care of my garden. I'm typically in the garden about an hour a day. Half of that is watering. I water at the base of the plants for the most part, and I don't use the sprinkler system because I don't want the leaves to get wet, which is another reason why there isn't a lot of disease on the plants. If you leave the leaves wet, then you can have a lot of problems with diseases, especially fungal diseases with the humidity we have. So hand watering also allows me to keep an eye on each type of plant. So I take my time and kind of meditate and think about what I want to do for that day. But I would say that it takes me about 30 to 45 minutes a day for watering when in the heat of the summer. And I would say maybe 4 hours a week I spend cleaning, maintaining, planting, and bumping up seedlings, since I start most of my things from seed, which saves me a ton of money and allows me to have a lot more variety. So I have things that I couldn't even think about having otherwise. Celosia flamingo, I've got delphiniums and foxgloves, Jean et Vert squash, which I couldn't find locally. I've got stock seedlings. I have phlox. I have all kinds of things that just do not allow me to buy them locally. Even the cosmos, it's very difficult to find locally. So I have spotted okra, green okra with red spots, it's a totally different blend of okra. A new hybrid that was naturally brought about. So I like to kind of play scientist in my garden, so I encourage things to mix and mingle so I can get new varieties of zinnias. My F1 zinnias give me all kinds of their children. The F2 give me all kinds of interesting mixes too. So so I think that makes it a lot easier, since I allow nature to do a lot for me, and I keep an eye on things. I think that's your best defense. You see a problem, don't ignore it. Just take care of it right away. If you need to pull the plant, then pull the plant. It's better than me spraying a bunch of chemicals. I'd rather pull a single plant than allow them to spoil the rest of the plants. So
I hope this tour of Sam's colorful potager garden gives you more ideas for yours. Happy gardening!